Hey there, you guys have been sending me so many great questions that I'm making an extra video today to try to get caught up with all of them. So I have my trusty notebook where I wrote all of them down. And let's tackle this. So one of the questions is, what about using fecal grab samples? And by that, when we say that, we mean just walking out in the pasture and picking up several samples and kind of see where we are from a parasite burden. And that certainly is convenient. And it certainly, if you do a flotation on that, it'll give you an idea of at least what parasites are out there. So, for example, if you had whipworms or nematodirus out there, you might be able to find it by doing that. But what it does not do is really give you a good quantification across the herd. And remember that when we're talking about sustainable parasite management, part of that is that we are identifying animals that are high egg shedders and potentially removing them from the herd if we're not able to control their parasites. So, um, based on the principles of sustainable parasite control, getting grab samples, you don't know whose it is. So we don't know that number 82 over there is shedding 40,000 eggs per gram while everybody else is shedding 600 or whatever. And so it does not allow you to identify individual animals who are the problem. And if you look into my small ruminant parasite series, I'll show you some data in there about how there are individual animals who are the problem for the whole herd based on genetics and other factors. And so we have to get those animals identified. And unfortunately, fecal grab samples, convenient as they are, do not get that job done. The next question is a very common one, which is help me get rid of coccidia. And certainly we have all pulled a lot of hair out over coccidia, and our clients have too. Coccidia is a massive issue, and that's why I devoted an entire module to it. Just talking about coccidia, what it does, and how to control it. And so I think you'll find some great tips in there. But three main things that I always bring up when people tell me I treated an animal for coccidia and it just didn't get better, which is the most common thing I get asked. First thing you have to think about is the possibility that they were reinfected. Remember, it is going to be in the environment for a very long time. So, are those animals simply getting reinfected? The drug was effective, it killed off what was in them, but now they've been exposed to the environment again and they are reinfected. The second thing to think about is intestinal damage from chronic coccidiosis. And I show you in that module some data in calves about how quickly massive intestinal damage occurs with coccidia infection. Basically, they end up with granulation tissue as the internal lining of their intestine. And so some of these animals will continue to have diarrhea, even though they don't have any coccidia in them or very few, because their intestinal lining has been damaged to that point. The third one is dosing route. So I am not a fan of treating, and let me underline, I'm talking about treating coccidiosis in the water or in the feed. By definition, to me, an animal who has clinical coccidiosis is probably not eating or drinking very well, and is unlikely to get the dose they need to treat themselves by feed or by water. And the drugs that we use in those scenarios are design kind of set up more for prevention rather than actual treatment. And so I would want to find out how have they been treating. If they have not been putting the drug directly in the animal at an appropriate dose, that could be why there's a treatment failure as well. And so we're very quick to jump on, oh, the drug's not working. But I would like for you to consider those three possibilities. One is that they're being reinfected. Two is that they've got substantial intestinal damage. And then three, how's it getting dosed to them and are they getting an appropriate dose? Okay, the third question, when to cull for parasites. So this is a great question. And again, I just alluded to this with the first question about One of the principles of sustainable parasite control is that you get rid of your repeat offenders. And so this individual asked, when should we be culling for parasites? When do parasites basically outweigh the animal's value? And we've all been in scenarios where it's a really expensive animal, it's the kid's former show doe, it's their favorite animal, in those kinds of situations. So for me, if I'm just being objective, if I FAMACHA score and or fecal egg per gram check an animal and I treat it for parasites and I get the environment cleaned up where we've got management fixed, if that animal pops up with a very high egg per gram count or persistently anemic FAMACHA score, meaning a 4 or 5, just no matter how we treat them, no matter how we manage them, they show up with a 4 or 5. And I kind of use the 3 strikes you're out technique. So if I've treated you and you keep staying that way, you and keep having high fecal egg per gram counts relative to the rest of the herd, you need to go. So that's quasi scientific, but that's my application of what I understand from the literature. How many eggs are too much? So this is a really common question. Everybody wants a threshold. And everybody gets mad at me when I won't give you a threshold, but I will give you some guidance. The reason I can't give you a true threshold is that an egg per gram count in Arizona is very different than an egg per gram count in Oklahoma or Texas, which is very different than an egg per gram count in Georgia, or Maine or North Dakota. So basically, if you're in areas where homunculus is not, drier areas, colder areas where homunculus doesn't thrive, your threshold is very different. And so we just have to be careful about that. So, for example, someone will send me, um, a fecal egg per gram count of 600 on a goat, and they'll be like, should I treat that or not? Well, in Oklahoma, that's practically a negative fecal. That's practically zero, because of the kinds of numbers that we see in warm areas like that. So in Arizona, though, 600 might be a huge burden. So what I generally tell people in the kind of homunculus parts of the country, so like Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and then pretty much straight east from there. I tell folks, and again, because that's the area I know and have the most experience with, um, I usually tell people I really start paying attention about 800 eggs per gram. I may not treat at 800, but if it gets up to 1,000 and 1,200, I'm going to be looking at FAMACHA score, and body condition score and determining how to treat based on that. So 800, my ears perk up a little bit, 1,000 to 1,200 again, and also time of year plays a role in this too. So there's like all kinds of caveats on this. But 800 to 1,000, 1,200, I'm going to be making sure that I'm checking FAMACHA score and fecal egg per, or excuse me, FAMACHA score and body condition score. So um, the take home from this, I hope for you, is that we really need to use multiple criteria. We need to be doing fecal egg per gram counts, and we need to be reading them in light of geography, recent weather patterns, kind of climate in general. And then we also need to look at FAMACHA score and body condition score to say this animal is actually clinically affected by its worms. There are some animals that can walk around with 1,200 eggs per gram of homunculus, or the trichostrongyle type worms, and they are clinically fine. And so we would like to, maintain those animals potentially untreated so that we have a good base of refugia, in that herd. So lots of things to think about there. That's why I can never give a straight answer to that question. I know you get frustrated with me, but I can't lie to you. I just can't. So the last question that we're going to cover in this batch of questions is, what about pet herds? So pet sheep and goats, herds or flocks. Is FOMACHA scoring enough, or do we need to do a fecal egg per gram count too? This is a great question. Um, so we always want to be doing FOMACHA scoring and body condition score. I think we often forget to talk about body condition score. We sort of do it and then don't really think about it. So we want to be doing FOMACHA score and body condition score. We can train the owners how to do those two things. And so the question is then, do we need to do, if we're doing those things, do we need to do a fecal egg per gram count? And the answer is yes. And here's why. FOMACHA only tells you about Haemonchus. It only tells you about the worm that's sucking blood. It doesn't tell you about coccidia. It doesn't tell you about nematodirus. It doesn't tell you about whipworms and others. And so my recommendation for pet herds, and I go over this in the herd management for parasites, for small ruminant parasites. I recommend that those herds be FOMACHA scored, be body condition scored, and then do a fecal egg per gram count on individual animals, not pooled, not grab samples, individual animals quarterly. And again, that is just to pick up worms that are not Haemonchus that might be sneaking into the herd. And in most pet situations, they've got few enough animals that that is an economically viable thing to do. So body condition score, FOMACHA score, and then fecal egg per gram count. I like the body condition score and the FOMACHA to be at least monthly, but then I want to come in with a fecal egg per gram count quarterly on individuals to make sure that those guys are covered there. So lots of great questions. I cover these and then expand on them, plus a lot more information in this small ruminant parasite series. I think you guys will really like it. It includes herd management of small ruminant parasites. That's where I really cover sustainable parasite control. Again, I have a whole coccidia module because we all hate coccidia. And then there's an anthelmintic drug use in there where I go through all the different anthelmintics, their characteristics, what they are good for, what they don't work for, and what the best ways are to dose those and use them. So I think I've put together a really practical set of information that can really help you. So I appreciate you sending those questions in and keep them coming.